And human rights lawyer, executive director, Social and Economic Rights Action Center, SERAC, Felix Morka, joins me on the news to discuss this. Good to have you join us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, this is the latest move by President Lukashenko after days and months of protests in that country over elections that were held there. I just want to get your reactions to this latest move by the President Lukashenko.
Well, the action of Lukashenko in using his military jets to force the landing of a commercial jetliner, Ryanair, that was originated from Athens, headed to Lithuania, is one of the most brazen, the most audacious breaches of international law by any serving president in recent memory. And this is quite serious because it poses very great danger to commercial airliners and travelers in that region, which is why justifiably the world is been very outraged and have condemned the actions of the president in very strong terms, and hopefully will move to impose very well-deserved sanctions against that regime in Belarus.
I will get to the issue of sanctions in a moment, but I just want to, you talked about how serious this is, especially because it poses danger to passengers, air passengers. But European nations have called it a state terrorism. You are a lawyer. Does this really amount to state terrorism?
Yes, it can. Under international law, when you use the sort of force and put, people, passengers in this case, in grave danger of their lives, that under certain circumstances can be interpreted to mean state-sponsored, terrorism. Because what would have happened if the pilots in charge of that aircraft had resisted the order to land, to divert to Minsk? If they had done so, they faced very serious danger of getting shot down. The plane in question was heavily armed, and so I don't think they sent the aircraft there for just for play. I think they meant business to force the plane to land so they can actually make the arrests of Mr. Roman.
President Lukashenko has continued to blatantly crack down on dissidents. Roman has been, Protasevich has been arrested. If he's charged with terrorism, he could face the death penalty. Why is it that nothing has been done in terms of, how far he's been able to crack down on dissidents and make a lot of arrests of protesters?
No, Mr. Lukashenko is backed heavily by the Putin administration in Russia. So he has a very strong ally in Putin. And that gives him some level of, protection, if you will, even against the powerful, EU or even the United States for that matter. So, I think that alliance between Lukashenko and Putin is probably the reason why he's been this brazen, hoping that whatever happens, he has the protection of the Russian strongman. But I think that this, again, will test the will of the European nations and the United States, especially the new Biden administration, to see how far, the world is waiting to see how far they're willing to go to actually bring Lukashenko to justice in some ways.
Well, how far can they go, though, bearing in mind that there are already sanctions against President Lukashenko and some people around him, and that hasn't yielded any results? What sort of sanctions can be put on him or members of his cabinet that will yield any meaningful impact?
Yes, you're right. So far, the regime of sanctions that's been imposed on that administration has been mostly diplomatic sanctions and, in the personal realm with the officials of the government. But I think what is required now probably more comprehensive program of sanctions that will target the finances of the administration, target some of the funders, some of the oligarchs who support Lukashenko. For instance, cutting them off from the international banking financial system will, I think, have some impact. on that government, but something more comprehensive, more thorough is required to actually make an impact.
Like you said earlier, this will require some sort of strategic cooperation with Russia, and it doesn't look like Moscow is willing to cooperate.
No, Russia is not about to give up of its own in this situation. So I think that the West and the United States really must, show leadership and squeeze the, financial opportunities and avenues of that administration. That's the only language that they're going to hear in a way that even Russia and Putin will not be able to actually help it out.
We see what's happening with Alexei Navalny in Russia. It almost looks like that's the same thing we're seeing with dissidents, especially journalist Roman Protasevich. It doesn't even seem like this is the end of it. It almost seems like it is the beginning. Is there anything that can be done to ensure that, in quotes, and I'm using this in quote, dictators do not begin to crack down on dissidents and people who just have a very different opinion from theirs?
No, unfortunately, the way the world is organized, even at the United Nations, rules are there to protect nation states, even when they have obligations to conduct themselves in civil, in a civil manner and respecting of, the fundamental rights of their citizens. But when they so violate those rights, sadly, international law does not give, we don't have any system of international police like we do within the domestic, jurisdiction that can just go out and capture a president. The system of resistance of dictators is a very slow, painstaking one. And, but it starts with, I think, really exhausting the power of sanctions and financial pressure on those regimes, and then isolate them. But then when it rises to the level of crimes against humanity, that's when I think the International Criminal Court and other systems at the UN are able to actually take the sort of action that can bring those individuals into some sort of physical custody that can then hopefully change things. But almost always that happens too late, a little too late for those who are within immediate danger, like the young man that we're discussing in Belarus.
Absolutely, especially when you look at what's going on now with Alexei Navalny. We'll see how things play out, especially with the sanctions. Hopefully they have some effect. Human rights lawyer, Executive Director, Social and Economic Rights Action Center, Felix Morka, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you so much.